Hello and welcome to AIBC Summit YouTube channel. Now we're well underway into 2021 and we've witnessed some great things already, new all-time highs for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So as new investors and mostly retail investors are flocking to exchanges, I'll be taking a look at 10 of the most common things that you should know about blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And joining me to discuss this and more, I have Ouriel, CEO at ZenGo. So fantastic to have you join me today. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks for having me.
Very welcome, and what a time. I had to come and invite you to help decipher some of the magic world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies and help give some of our new users just a little bit more context and information. So I had a look at a ZenGo blog post, which is taking a look at some of the key fundamental things that new users should know. And I think, first of all, one of the most common questions that I get asked, and I'm sure you do as well, is for new users to decide what tokens to invest in. Say they've deposited on an exchange. When it comes to the large variety of tokens, Bitcoin, Ethereum, how are they different, and how can they decide where to put their money?
Well, I think before they decide to put their money, they need to understand in what they put their money. I think there is first an information phase they need to go through, and we were talking about it before, it's like learning a new language. So you can't just go to a country and start to speak, right? You need to learn the alphabet, the grammar. And so the same goes with cryptocurrencies. You need to understand what you're putting your money on before you actually do it. And so to do that, there is a vast amount of resources available, but the real best way to do it is to start with very, very little amount of money and start to actually own some Bitcoin. And so the only way to actually own it is to own a wallet, to own something that enables you to send and receive. And from there, you start to get some of the concepts that are hard to learn. Once you get there, you need to kind of connect with the fundamentals of that cryptocurrency, understand what it's best for and why you believe into it. So there is a part of rational and a part of irrational. And so once you find this connection, and it can be for different kind of reasons, and different kind of people will connect to it. In Latin America, people will connect to it because they need to own Bitcoin to pay for stuff. And so the connection is immediate and rational because they need it urgently. But for people who live in developed countries like in the US, you invest in Bitcoin because you want to maybe have it as a store of value. You think it's going to gain in value. So you need to connect to a dimension that you can believe it. Why? Because the price is so volatile that if you don't, at some point you will panic. And you will panic, and this is the worst that can happen. So understand first, start small, and connect to a fundamental that you can stick on over time so you don't panic. And then you can get going, and also you can diversify over time, but start small and start simple.
And you said there that markets are known to be volatile, and I couldn't agree with you more there. So for a lot of new users that might be kind of overwhelmed at these price fluctuations that we see, you would suggest starting small. And I think that's another misconception, that people assume that you might have to buy a whole of one token, when in reality you can buy a small percentage of a fraction. And there's also the phrase of kind of cost averaging as well. So if new users would ask you about that, is that something that you would recommend to just kind of suppress that volatility just a little bit?
Yeah, we never make recommendations on financial guidance, and for ethical reasons, we don't do that. We do provide tools for people to make their choices, but it's just common sense also. It's true for any sort of investment. You want to start small and start to understanding what you put your money on. And the second rule that is very important is never put more than you can afford to lose without getting into a psychological breakdown and panic attack, because there is an element of risk, and the risk that can be a market risk, but also security risks and also human error risk. So if you lose that money, you need to make sure that it's not material to you, so that you can live normally and don't obsess about it. So very important to start small and start with amount of money that are immaterial to you, unless you have a very strong appetite for risk, but it's not for everyone. And then once you are into those dimensions, you can decide how much you want to put. And everyone has very different ways of reading those things. Some are rich, some are not rich, some are students, some are kids, some are adults. And so everyone will have its proportion. Some people say that it's a good thing to have somewhere between 5 to 10% of your net worth in cryptocurrency. But I wouldn't know if this is the right number. It sounds like a reasonable thing to say because it's a minority. as I said before, again, everyone has to find his sweet spot. And so the important thing, at least for us, is to put customers in their comfort zone, so that they are not pushed toward in a direction, and that they can make their choices and they can make informed decisions. So this is very important. And it's true, this market is highly confusing, it's highly stressful, and the amount of complexity that a new user has to go through is immense. We tend to forget it because we've been there for years. But when you someone to get started, really, you understand that the 99% of whatever we talk about on a daily basis is way too complex. So reducing dramatically the complexity is very important. And so we need to adapt to that reality, because now many more users are coming to crypto.
And we've spoken about the crypto element now, and now I think it's time to move on to the blockchain element for our new users. And I think something that we have to address is public addresses. And what does it mean to have a public address? Does it need to be updated for every single transaction? And also, can an account expire?
There we go, we get into the new language of money, right? We used to speak dollars and bank account and PayPal and Venmo, and so people are used to know how to send money, and they use usually all sorts of like conventional stuff. Sometimes it's a bank IBAN or switch account, or simply sometimes just a username on an email. And you don't have that on the blockchain, at least not yet, and there is no definitive standard. So you need to get familiar with the equivalent of an email address or a bank account address, which is a public address. And it's very, very scary at first, because it's a random string of character, and people tend to not understand what this is. And the concept of an address is really, really weird. In Bitcoin, it's even more complicated, because in some wallets, like for example ours, for privacy reasons, the address changing all the time to protect the privacy, so you cannot be traced at every single transaction. And so people get confused by that, because your bank account and your email address do not change at every message or transaction that you send. So there is some sort of you need to acclimate yourself to the structure, to the way it works. And also you need to understand what a transaction means. People are confused by network fees. They think that everything is free on the blockchain. It's not. You have to pay network fees, and transactions are not instant. So people need to get familiar with that, with the address and how it's used. And it's true that a public address is the necessary step, one of the first steps that you need to learn. Also private keys, by the way. You need to learn a public key and private key. And in our case, we have decided to remove completely the private key of the table, so people can get straight to the public key, and so they have a keyless wallet and they can get to that. But most wallets or even exchanges don't do that, and it's a level of complexity people have a difficulty to go through. So public keys, no matter what you do, you're going to be exposed to it. You need to understand that it's an equivalent of a destination address or a receiving address, like in an email client or a bank account. And then you need to understand how transactions work, meaning the concept of network fees, the concept of confirmation, and the concept that transactions are not instant. And then you've done step 1 out of 10, and you can get started.
And you managed to make it sound very, very easy. So I think the first question there, if I'm kind of putting myself in the mindset of a user, is if the public addresses are changing constantly, does that mean that the public address that you had for your wallet 3 or 4 days ago that is different now? Has the previous address expired, or can you still receive through that?
So first, the rotating address, in technical terms called HD wallet, is only specific to Bitcoin. You don't have that in other cryptocurrencies. So you don't have that in Ethereum and in other chains which are account-based. So only in Bitcoin, and only in the best practice of Bitcoin wallets. And so that's number 1. Number 2, this is the good news and the scary part at first when you don't know it. Old address always follow you as long as you have the same account. Okay, so if, of course, you create a new wallet somewhere, those addresses will not follow you. But if you use the same wallet, all the old addresses are going to follow you. And this is very useful, because if I give you, for example, my address today, and just to receive $1, I don't want you to know all the other transactions I had in the past and all the transactions I had in the future. It's as if I was giving you access to my private bank account. So this is very useful, but you need to understand. And indeed, all the address follow you, and they change at every single transaction. And this is a good thing. It protects your privacy. Once you know that, you can breathe again and you can move on.
It's true. I'm sure a lot of new users, I think myself included a few years ago, had that initial mini heart attack. Why is the wallet different? And then when we go on to transaction time and speed of transaction, because people that are used to more traditional banking might expect the 3 to 5 working days, and it is a little bit different in the realm of blockchain. So can you talk us through transaction time? What can people expect?
Yeah, I mean, we've been accustomed with the modern internet to everything instant, right? And, even emails arrive fast, now messaging, even money. Like in Europe, we have instant SEPA bank wire where you press a button and the money arrives instantly. In the business world, it's not always like that. It's the famous 3 to 5 business days. And this concept is completely antiquated in cryptocurrency, except when the blockchain network is massively congested. So you don't talk in terms of business days in cryptocurrency, you talk in terms of confirmation. Confirmation is the amount of effort, not time, that the network has to produce to process, secure, and validate a transaction. And so some blockchains like Bitcoin sometimes require up to 6 confirmation, and some other networks like Etheruem can require up to 25 confirmation. And some exchanges and wallets have different policies when they accept a transaction. In our case, for example, we accept transaction from the first confirmation. The point is you cannot consider that a transaction is received until there is at least 1 confirmation, meaning that the fact that you have pressed send doesn't mean that it's been received. And this is always very confusing to users. They believe that because they press send that it's game over, and it's not. The transaction can take much longer time to arrive because the first confirmation will take time because the network is congested. A transaction can fail. Sometimes it can fail because the network has not accepted your transaction because you have not paid enough network fees or other reasons. Very rare, but that can happen. And then the funds return to you, of course. They never get lost in limbo. So the concept of confirmation is important to understand. In normal time, most transactions arrive in a matter of single-digit hours, sometimes in single-digit minutes. You can send $1 billion across the world with nearly instantly, except when everything is congested. So how do you know when the network is congested? You have to look at certain tools that are available on the web. Certain wallets provide those tools also. But you have a hint when you see that the network fees are very expensive. You know this is not the right time to send $1 because it costs you $10 to send it. Example today. It's not a good time to send Bitcoin or Ethereum. So you need to know all of those things, and by doing, you learn them.
Fantastic. So you've given us so much to think about there. You've given us kind of transaction fees, wallet addresses, private versus public, and also crypto volatility. So that's a lot, and I'm sure our viewers have found that really, really useful. So thank you so much for that information. Now, just finally before we go, because I do have to pick your brains on the character that you have behind them. All I can think about is Elon Musk causing quite a storm on social media, and it looks like a sleepy Elon Musk behind you.
Well, it's a sleepy Ouriel. It's a 3D mask. Of myself that we use because the wallet that we've built is not using any password. You don't have to, or public key or private private key. It's completely passwordless, and so we use a certain number of passwordless factors, including liveness biometrics, meaning the fact that you are you. And so it's an encrypted private scan of your face happening on your phone. And it doesn't. We built that because we wanted to make sure that it actually works and that it cannot be bypassed by a 3D mask, which can be built, costs some money, but can be built. And so we tried it, and it doesn't work. You have a video on YouTube that actually proves it.
Fantastic. So I'm sure some of our users can go and check it out if the prospect of passwords and keys is a little bit too daunting for them. Thank you so much for providing your insights today in what is such an exciting time for the industry. It was a pleasure to catch up, and all the best going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, that's all from us here. We'd love to hear how you found this video. Have you learned something along the way, and what was the most valuable piece of information for you? Please share your thoughts in the comments below.